So this was actually inspired by Maclean's magazine, which is a big enough example that I'll talk about it in my description here, in that they got a group of a dozen Canadian citizens together in 1991 and had them facilitated by Roger Fisher and a team from Harvard to come up with a vision, a shared vision for Canada. And these people had been chosen for their, amazing differences. They were all different, represented different kinds of energy and demographics and whatever in Canada. So this was an exhibition. It was also covered by TV. This was an exhibition of a conversation between people who were really different and showing they could actually work together. They had to go through a bunch in order to do that, but they did. And part of what made it particularly compelling was that the magazine covered the individuals, described the individuals in some detail and why they had been chosen. So the people who were people who were reading the magazine or watching the TV show had a chance to identify with some of these people. And, these are people that I'm like, and these are people that are unlike me, who I dislike a lot. And so they sort of were pulled into the story of what happened next. And what happens next is the details of, day by day, hour by hour, what unfolds. So this is a way of, magnifying and inviting millions of people into a different way of having a conversation. And most of the people who are watching or reading this probably never dreamed it was possible for people who are that different to actually work together. So this is I call this visionary attractors, because it is drawing people in, and it's the kind of thing that we want to have happen, presented in a way that draws people into trying to have more of that, trying to do more of that. And the idea of people who are, it's a familiar idea of people who are role models. It's like suddenly in the United States, there's a black president, and black people who never dreamed they could ever be president suddenly, we could be president. And there's people who start to get involved in politics because there's a black president. So this is what we have now, has all these inadequacies in it. And we imagine what life could be like if we actually could handle all those and get to a better place. And often there's a longing, a sense of longing in that, but it's often overridden by quote unquote reality. Reality gets in the way. There's no way that you're going to get a black president. There's no way you're going to get the Quebec people and the strong Canadian constitutionalists to actually talk together and come up with something, and then you prove that it's possible and have that draw people in. And that can be imagination too. It can be an imaginary story. There's examples of novels, utopian novels that have been written, where people actually said, "Hey, let's try and do this," So, and the what is it called? The Earth First is a radical environmental group that people just started doing the things that were in a novel called The Monkey Wrench Gang. And it's described, here's the things you do, here's why, and here's how, and in the context of a compelling story. So there's all sorts of ways to do it, but the idea is to have some specific thing that is presented in a way that you go, we got to do this. So the presentation is as important as the thing that is being presented, but it has to fill in, it has to ramp up the energies that are that exist between what we have now and what we'd really like to have. So visionary attractors are important for wise democracy in a number of ways, one of which is getting there. to be able to to have these, present the wise democracy modes and methods, and to present them in ways that people want them, the way McLean's magazine did. And also, when we imagine how a wise democracy would operate, there's an awful lot of microcosm activities going on where you are investing informational and facilitation resources and random selection resources, whatever, into people who are paying particular close attention to working on a particular issue. And you can generate a level of collective wisdom in that group. But then there's the issue of the relationship between that group and the larger society. How does the larger society pick up and absorb and work with and digest the wisdom that comes out of a microcosm? And this visionary attractors mode is a compelling way to do that. And I can imagine that being formalized into various democratic systems to ensure that that happens, not necessarily to propagandize the public. That's one approach to it, a bit like the spousal abuse soap opera example, where you're trying to push a particular idea onto the population, but also evocative, to draw them in to explore and learn about what the details of a particular situation are, so that they get involved, they bring it into their life. And I call this in terms of examples, I call this general kind of activity Imagineering. Turns out Walt Disney created it to mean that word to mean something totally different, but I didn't know that, and I created the word independently to mean, a narrative that is presented in a way that people want to live into that. And the materials I have on Imagineering in my website give specific examples, like the Free Hugs campaign, a video of a guy in a mall that's walking around with a sign that says free hugs, and people originally at the start they all ignore him, and then somebody starts to hug him, and then other people start joining, and then pretty soon he's passing out signs that say free hugs, and other people are walking around with a free hug sign, getting hugs and giving hugs, and then the mall guards come around and go, no, can't do that, too risky, somebody's going to get upset. And so they then do a petition drive, and all this is on this little 5-minute video, and the petition, they get a whole pile of signatures and they present it, and the guards have to back down, and they carry on their free hugs campaign. And all sorts of people started doing that all over the world. There's a whole free hugs movement, people going around with signs and videoing each other, giving and getting free hugs. And I look at that and I go, if we could do that really well as a social change thing, if we could figure out what we can represent in a simple, doable way that is what's needed for the transition that we're trying to make happen, that's a very powerful kind of intervention. That's what Imagineering is all about. And there are kinds of drama. I can't remember where. I think it was in some Caribbean island where there's a lot of spousal abuse, and soap operas are like really popular. And so they arranged for one of the popular soap operas to present issues of spousal abuse that then were handled well. And suddenly people started doing what they'd seen in the soap operas, and the amount of spousal abuse went down. So that use of drama is another really good example of this visionary attractors. And the positive deviance is another one. It's an odd one, a different kind of application. But you have a situation like the example that I read about was in Vietnam, children being malnutrition, not getting enough food, very poor people. And these people went in and explored what was going on there, and they found there were a couple of pockets of places where people actually were not experiencing malnutrition. The kids were healthy. and they did a little research to find out what was going on. And there were little animals that were growing in the rice paddies, and the mothers would, while they're working in the rice paddies, would pick out these animals and cook them and feed them to their kids. And so the idea of taking the people who already were doing a successful action in an issue or problem that was shared by the community, having them go talk to these mothers would go talk to the other mothers. It wasn't this, international public service nonprofit that was coming in saying, why don't you feed kids this? It was like, here's your peer. This is what she's doing, and they would talk about it and arrange to do it. So that spread the idea of feeding these little animals to the kids. So these are all radically different approaches to having some possibility that's out there that then is presented in a compelling way that people actually live into it, or something that's happening on a small scale starts to happen on a big scale because of the way it has been presented.